Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. I know it's been a little while since we've done these baseball shows, but even though there's a lockout going, there certainly is no shortage of baseball topics to talk about. With that said, though, before I get into it, I just want to be thankful that we're joined by Rick Curti. Welcome back, Rick.
Thanks, Scott.
And Greg Fuchs. Well, this is your debut on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk.
Glad to be here. Love to talk baseball.
Well, we're going to have plenty to do that. But before we talk baseball, folks, okay, we have a new show appearing on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, as well as the rest of our providers, called Inside the Pigskin. This is going to be a great show that centers around all aspects of football, whether it's the NFL, college football, high school, betting, and so forth. So we're looking forward to launching that tomorrow. Hope you'll be able to go out there and pay attention to it. There's so many great things to talk about, and we're going to make sure we do our best to cover every particular topic out there. With that said, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be found on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts, as well as you can subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Very easy. Find us at youtube.com, hit South Florida Tribune, subscribe, that gets it done. Or you can locate it on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. All right, well, tonight's topic will be about the toughest club to get into. So, wonder what that really means, Rick Curti. What is the toughest club to get into?
Baseball Hall of Fame.
You got it. And let's talk about some numbers here. As of this moment, there's 340 elected members, 268 former MLB players, 40 executives, pioneers, 22 managers, 10 umpires, and the first class was inducted in June 12th, 1939. Now, I should put out a little bit of a side note here that the all-time hits leader, Pete Rose, is not among those 340. We'll leave that for another day. We're not even getting into Charlie Hustle. Pete Rose, he is out. All right, but with that said, we're going to talk about the latest person who is in. David Ortiz, the Big Papi. January 25th, 2022, he was welcomed into it. And I want to break down some numbers with David Ortiz, and I'm going to get both of your opinions on these guys. He retired with a 286 batting average, 541 home runs, 1,786 RBI, 2,472 hits, three-time World Series champion, 10-time All-Star. He was instrumental in the 86-year World Series drought by the Red Sox. I know he was alleged to take PEDs, but Commissioner Rob Manfred said that the tests were inconclusive, that there were leaks, rumors, and innuendos, and he endorsed Ortiz to get in. Let's not kid ourselves. David Ortiz, in my opinion, is one of the most likable individuals on the planet. And, you know, when you get on the good side of the BBWA, Baseball Writers Association of America, that certainly helps your cause. So, Rick, you have some strong opinions on David Ortiz?
Yeah, he's a cheater. He shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, we talk about, people like Bonds and McGuire and Sosa and Clemens. Should they be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. Are they going to get in? No, because they cheated. Because PEDs has been proven over and over that it does help you. Look at Bonds' numbers before and after he was taking PEDs. He went from 30 home runs to 60 and 70, so they do play a part in your numbers. And for David Ortiz, he was on the same list as A-Rod. Remember that infamous list where all these players were on there and it got leaked out, and A-Rod, and then finally he admitted, yeah, I took steroids because I was so stressed out because I made so much money, whatever. But David Ortiz was on that list too. And people seem to forget that. And so if you're going to put him in, then you might as well just put Bonds and McGuire and all the rest in. So I don't understand why Major League Baseball is doing this. They have shown that they're not going to allow PED users in the Hall of Fame, but yet they elected a PED user in David Ortiz because of what you guys said. He's likable, and that's just not right.
What's your thoughts, Greg?
I mean, there's no doubt statistically he deserves to be in. Great player. But he's tainted with those PEDs, and you never know how long any of these players took him for. I mean, A-Rod might have been doing it in his entire career for all I know. And those guys, they cheated the game. They cheated their opponents. And, if you're fairly confident, and this can vary by player to player, that they took PEDs, I don't put them in the Hall of Fame. They got everything else they wanted. They got the fame, the stats, the money. The only penalty is you don't get to go into the special club. And I wouldn't put these guys in. Now you have some other guys who've gotten in, might be similar to Ortiz, Mike Piazza, Jeff Bagwell. Who's the other guy I'm forgetting? But there's another one recently, who got
Rodriguez. Would you say Pudge Rodriguez falls into that category?
Yeah. Did Pudge make it in yet? I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Is
in.
he in?
B-
Yeah, he's one of those
Biggio?
guys. Sometimes it comes down to, was there hard proof or was there a test they failed? And some players are just more likable. Bagwell, a likable player. Piazza was a likable player. Big Papi certainly was. And I think that plays into it, because the people doing the voting, they're human beings. They're not robots. And personal feelings are going to come into play at times.
Yeah, there's no question. I know a lot of voters that are that vote for the Hall of Fame, and there's no question that likability has a lot to do with it. And to me, David Ortiz is one of the most likable individuals on the planet. I am kind of happy to see that he did get in a little bit, because I don't know if you could really imagine that the Baseball Hall of Fame would not have any elected members 2 years in a row. But I think he was the right guy to get in. I don't know, but it's not like he got in convincingly.
Yeah.
David Ortiz's numbers are 77.9%. And I'm not no math major, okay, but 2.9% isn't an awful lot. So a lot of people were certainly divided on the subject.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, David Ortiz is in. And, it doesn't hurt when you play in a big market like Boston, where there's a big influence up in New England as well. So, I'm kind of happy that he is in, but I certainly understand the reason for not to go both ways. But when you have the commissioner, Rob Manfred as an ally of yours, they're certainly going to take his opinion into consideration, and that might sway things a little bit. So I'm on the fence with Ortiz. I still don't have a problem with him being in, but I can certainly see both sides. We'll go from likability to unlikability. And the man I'm referring to is Barry Bonds, okay? I'll never forget the time when I covered the Florida Marlins at the time when they defeated the San Francisco Giants 2003 divisional series. And it's just the most unbelievable, surreal feeling when the Marlins did go ahead and oust the Giants with that collision at the plate, which we talk about Ivan Rodriguez. That was it. But let me break down Bonds' numbers: 762 home runs, a 14-time All-Star, a 298 average, 2,935 hits, 73 home runs in a single season, most all time, 514 stolen bases. Not like, well, Rick Curti, you said it yourself about Barry Bonds. So why don't you talk? First of all, when I had the choice to go ahead and go to a press conference featuring Barry Bonds or the Florida Marlins, I had zero problem going in the Marlins locker room and getting dosed with all that champagne and staying away from Barry Bonds, who I can't stomach anyways. So with that said, Rick, talk about Barry Bonds.
Well, we talk about likability, and now we're talking about unlikability, and that's a shame that you have to be if you're a nice guy or that. Like I said before, should Barry Bonds be in the Hall of Fame and all the rest? Absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame, but they're not going to get in because of PEDs. And the sad part about Barry Bonds is that he would have gone in the Hall of Fame even if he didn't take the PEDs. He's one of the greatest all-around players ever. And allegedly, he was so jealous of McGwire and Sosa's home run chase that he wanted to be the part of the show. And that's when he started doing the PEDs. And I mean, he looked like Lou Ferrigno. And anybody didn't think he was taking PEDs, I'm sorry, you need to get some glasses, because it was very, very obvious. And, he was always like a great all-around hitter. He never hit 50 home runs, 60, 70 home runs. Without the PEDs, there is no way in the world Barry Bonds would be the home run king. It would still be Hank Aaron, who I still look as the home run king. So should Barry Bonds be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely, with his numbers. But because of the PEDs that he took, and then he claimed that he thought they were vitamin B shots. Really? Come on, Barry, you can do better than that. So great player, one of the best all-around players. The numbers absolutely are there, but should he be in the Hall of Fame? Yes. Is he going to go in? No. And I would never vote for him or any other PD user to go to the Hall of Fame.
Well, 66% was his final vote. Did you see a different Barry Bonds when he was with the Pittsburgh Pirates? Yes. When he went to San Francisco, did you see one? Oh, yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
the only stat that I don't think can be tainted was the amount of times he got hit by a pitch because nobody wanted to pitch to him. I didn't look at it. I really didn't care. I'll give you that, Barry. Nobody will put an asterisk as to how many times you were hit by a pitch because they didn't want to pitch to you. Then again, they must have feared something anyways. But yeah, he certainly angered a lot of writers, and don't tell me writers don't go ahead and have a thick skin. So with that said, Greg Fuchs, your thoughts about Barry Bonds?
That goes a lot of what Rick said. You know, you could just take one look at him later in his career and his muscles, the size of his head. You could tell he was on something. Plus, at age 35, when most players' careers start going downhill a little bit, he had the best years of his career. I think he hit the 73 homers, I think, or 70, was it 73? When he was 36 years old. And then he hit like 45 and 45 and stuff like that when he was approaching 40 years of age. So he was all juiced up. And to me, it's just a black and white issue. If you're on PEDs, you can't get in the Hall of Fame. And one of you two just mentioned, you know, he's the home run king. I'm surprised Major League Baseball hasn't done something about that, because he wouldn't even been close to Hank Aaron without the PEDs. And to consider him the home run king, and baseball is a sport more than any other sport based on statistics. People love the stats of baseball, and to show him at the top of the list when you look at home runs, that doesn't feel good to me. Can't stand it.
Well, you know what? I'll go back to what you said, Rick. Hank Aaron, in my eyes, is the all-time home run king. I don't care.
Yep.
And if you're going to go ahead and have recognized Barry Bonds as the all-time home run king, well, why don't we just go ahead and give him an asterisk? Everybody else gave Roger Maris an asterisk.
Yeah.
Played more games. If there's anybody more deserving of an asterisk than Barry Bonds, folks, we encourage you to go ahead and contact us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to go ahead and bring your opinion on the air. And if I think your comments are that good, I'll be more than happy to bring you on there. You can talk to us as well. So for all you folks that are out there listening, if you have something to bring to the show, you're welcome to come on our broadcast anytime, and we'd love to have you. So asterisk to me for Barry Bonds, and yes, Hank Aaron to me is the all-time home run king. Yep. One other individual I want to talk about before we wrap up this broadcast is Roger Clements. Again, 65.2% is where he ended his time on the ballot. 7-time Cy Young Award winner, most all time. His record is 354 and 184 with 4,672 strikeouts and 11-time All-Star. I know he won a couple championships as well. At least Barry Bonds didn't win one of those. Okay, and of course, Ortiz wins his. So let's break down Roger. I've always thought he was one of the most feared, intimidating pitchers on the planet. I do believe he's in the Boston Red Sox Hall of Fame, so at least he gets in that one, and rightfully so. And I think that Roger Clements would have looked good in a Red Sox uniform from start to finish without making his other stops. I didn't ever imagine he would end up going to the Yankees and the Blue Jays, and as well as his other stops, because I've always recognized Roger as a Boston Red Sox. So with that said, Rick, we'll continue to go in the order that we're going in. What about Roger Clements?
Well, again, a great pitcher. He was one of my favorite pitchers growing up. Like I said, should he be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely, one of the best pitchers. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Of course not, because like I said before, he's a PED user. His career was going downhill, and that's why the Red Sox got rid of him. You know, people blame Dan Duquette, and then of course he goes to the Blue Jays and has a renaissance year. That's the time when he started taking steroids, you know, and, you know, like Bonds again, you know, it's proven fact. It's, I mean, just look at the guy. He was even better in his, I mean, he's pitching great in his 40s, you know, so I mean, again, great player, one of the best pitchers of all time, you know, Should they be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Are they going to get in? No, because like Greg said, it's black and white for me too. You take PEDs, you should not be in the Hall of Fame. And the person that the Major League Baseball needs to look at for the Hall of Fame is Fred McGriff. I mean, you talk about a guy who's so underappreciated and underrated, and no scandals. And I never heard one reporter say a bad word about Fred McGriff. How that man is not in the Hall of Fame is an atrocity to me.
Okay, Greg, what are your thoughts on Roger Clements?
Yeah, Rick already alluded to it. I remember his last couple of years in Boston. He wasn't quite the pitcher he used to be for whatever reason. And then he goes to Toronto and voila, he turns things around. And you can see he got, I'll call it thicker, much more muscular and bigger later in his career. And he had some outstanding years for Toronto and the Yankees. I wouldn't put him in for the same reason we've already talked about. And going back to David Ortiz means, you think about Clemens, one of the great pitchers, and the Red Sox say, nah, we don't want to re-sign you. David Ortiz was released by the Minnesota Twins. Just think of that. Is there anyone else who's ever been released that made it into the Hall of Fame? I mean, that is just mind-boggling to me. After like 4 or 5 years, the Twins just said, nah,
yeah,
see you later, David. Then he went to Boston and just took off. When he started taking steroids, not really sure, but.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had Pedro Martinez endorsing the daylights out of him. So you think the Red Sox going to listen to him? Yes. Okay. You're going to play over at Fenway Park where we know it's a hitter's ballpark. Yeah. So, I'll give you that. I mean, in terms of the steroids with Ortiz, but it doesn't hurt when you're playing in Fenway Park or Coors Field or hitter's ballparks because, I realize PEDs are what they are, but I call some of those ballparks bandboxes of what I call them. But back to Roger Clements, okay, we talk about giving an asterisk next to Barry Bonds' home run titles, but do you really give an asterisk next to Cy Young Awards 7 most all time? Because to me, are Cy Young's more asterisk type of things than home run records? You know what? Maybe I might be a little bit softer on that. I loved Roger Clemens and the fierce competitor he was. He got thrown out of a playoff game because he was angry at the umpire. Everybody knows he flung the bat at Mike Piazza. I mean, this guy was, when he was on the hill, you want to talk about the most fierce competitor. I personally like Roger Clemens. I really do. But you can't downplay the significance of the reality that, was he involved with those problems? And of course, another thing that worked against him too was, I believe, was that when he went to Congress and he lied under oath and all that, so that didn't help matters any either for Roger either. But I think the one thing I'm amazed about everything about the Hall of Fame voting is everybody was so angry at the process and the writers that when you put it all in perspective, okay, the reality is these guys lasted 10 years on the ballot. So you knew there was a hidden agenda there. Okay. And, Rick, so, I mean, I would love to see Clemens in the Hall of Fame. I think Bonds kind of deserves to be there because it gets back to what I mentioned at the top of the show. Rose isn't in there, all-time hits leader. Then you have Bonds all-time home run. Of course, Roger Clemens. They should all be, but when I talk about the toughest club to get into, none of those guys are there. It's like you say, Rick, okay, do I think Fred McGriff belongs in the Hall of Fame? No doubt about it. I'll tell you another guy who I really do believe belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he had a problem called diarrhea of the mouth, Curt Schilling, okay? If Curt Schilling could keep his big mouth shut, okay, and not tell the writers not to vote for him because he was at 71% prior and dropped down to 58%. Curt, keep your mouth shut. I know what a great postseason pitcher he was and how he was an innings eater. And I think he belongs in there, but again, he was too outspoken and vocal on a lot of different issues, but he was so close until all of a sudden he didn't use a lot of common sense. Mind you, folks, I want to make sure that the focal point of this show here does center around David Ortiz, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens, but it's pretty hard to overlook the Pete Roses and the Fred McGriffs and the Curt Schillings, as well as the other ones that didn't get in. But yeah, do I think Clemens and Bonds? Sure they do. But reality is it's black and white, like you guys said. No, they're not getting in. And I still, to this point, don't have as much of a problem with Ortiz because of the gray area out there. And guess what? He's in the Hall of Fame, so it doesn't matter what we think anyways.
Yeah.
So,
And the other thing Ortiz had going for him, which goes for a lot of guys who get into the Hall of Fame, played on good teams, always in the playoffs, always on national TV. And that just, everyone knows who you are, and that helps a lot. If he was stuck on the Kansas City Royals and never making the playoffs, probably wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Nope, he wouldn't be.
well, more importantly, he didn't hurt playing in Boston either. I mean, let's face the reality.
Yep.
There's such a big influence when you're playing in the large markets such as Boston, New York, LA, just to name a few. I don't want to get into a whole lot of detail there. But when you're in a major market and you're performing well, that works to your advantage. What it really comes down to in some cases, though, folks, likability got Ortiz in, unlikability got Bonds out, and Roger Clemens, who knows where he fits there. But
There's a lot of them that should be in. Like, look at Rafael Palmeiro. He should be in the Hall of Fame easily. Look at his numbers. But remember that, wagging the finger. I've never taken steroids, and of course he got popped for steroids. So I mean, he's one of my favorite players. I love watching him play. Great player.
I loved him, and
No
he
doubt
never
about it.
looked like he took steroids. He never
No.
hit the tape measure home runs,
Yep.
but he failed the test.
well,
Yeah.
we'll introduce a new word if there isn't already out there. It's called lying ability. Okay. Yeah, because that's probably what describes Rafael Palmeiro, but lying ability. So we're going to leave it at that. So there you have it, folks. We've talked about Ortiz, Bonds, Roger Clements. So hope you've enjoyed this presentation of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth. Please be joined by Rick Curti and Greg Fuchs. We'll be doing a lot more baseball shows, lockout or no lockout, because there's a lot to uncover as time goes on. But meanwhile, what a great show. We hope we have a lot of people out there thinking about it. Let me go over how you can find the broadcast again before we wrap this puppy up. If you want to find us the audio way, you can do so on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel as well. And then you can also find us at www.southfloridatribune.com. I'm going to go out there and give my identifications. You can find me at Tribune South, and you can email me at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. So there you have it from my end. All right. With that said, Rick, go ahead and let people know how they can get a hold of you.
You can contact me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB and Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, Instagram at Charlotte Bats, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti. And our email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. And if you have any questions about MLB, my quest to bring MLB to Charlotte, or any other sports related questions, email me and I'll answer them as quickly as possible.
And just so you know, folks, Rick Curti appears on all of our shows here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. We really are a broadcasting network is what we are, because we consist of a lot of things as well. Just to give you an overview of the network, we have No Limits, which is a show which talks about anything. South Florida Tribune podcast out there. We talk to a lot of local businesses, a lot of them to promote. And we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, the Sports Exchange, and of course now the new show that'll debut tomorrow, that's Inside the Pigskin. So we hope you join us. All right, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I write for southfloridatribune.com. Been writing a lot of football recently. That's going to take a bit of a turn. More baseball coming up. Twitter, at G Fuchs, at Gregory Fuchs, and you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Very good. Well, Rick, once again, we appreciate you promoting the South Florida Tribune here on all of our social media outlets. And guys, we're going to be busy. We have a lot more things to work on. So meanwhile, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, and until the next time, take care, everybody, and be safe from COVID-19. It's out there. We got to make sure that we don't take this virus for granted. Good night, everybody, until the next time.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.